Hello and welcome to the new series of Drishti IAS. I am Pooja Divedi, and in this segment we are going to talk about the establishment of diplomatic ties between Kosovo and Israel. This topic is important from the perspective of prelims as well as from the perspective of GS Means Paper 2. So let's begin with the topics of discussion that we are going to look at. First of all, we will talk about why news. Then we will talk about the background of the entire problem or the issue with Jerusalem, Israel and Kosovo. We will also talk about Abraham Accords. We will talk about impacts on the geopolitical balance in the entire region. We will talk about Israel-India relations, and in the last of the segment, I am going to give you a mains-based question. In the midst of the segment, I am going to give you a pre-based question, for which if you know the answer, kindly comment in the comment segment. So let's begin with why in news. This topic is in news because of the establishment of diplomatic ties between Kosovo and Israel. So Israel, according to Kosovo, has become the 117th country to recognize its statehood, right? And because this is a US brokered deal, this will of course have an impact on the West Asia peace policy of the US, right? So if we talk about Israel, Israel is a country in Southwest Asia and it shares its borders with Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and this is Lebanon. Alright, and this is already a very volatile region. It has its technological and economic capital at Tel Aviv, but if we talk about the seat of power according to the government, it's Jerusalem. And of course, we have so many issues related to Jerusalem because this particular area, this particular city has a regional and also very other strategic significance for Judaism, for Islam and for Christianity as well. We will discuss about it later. So, if we talk about the maritime borders, it shares its borders with Mediterranean Sea and it lies at the northern end of Red Sea. Alright, let's move on and talk about Kosovo. Now, Kosovo is a landlocked country and it is having its capital at Pristina. It shares its borders with Serbia, Montenegro, Albania and North Macedonia. Alright, and if we talk about its achievement of statehood, it was on February 17, 2008 when this country of Kosovo, this state of Kosovo had actually declared unilaterally its independence, but Serbia does not recognize it. But more than 90 countries of the UN, 90 members of the UN have already recognized its statehood, its independence. And now Israel has become the 117th country. So if we talk about the problems related to Kosovo and the diplomatic ties it has established with Israel, what is the actual problem here? The actual problem is Kosovo is not recognized as a country by China and Russia, and US and Israel have already taken into account its existence. So that is going to be a problem for India in the future because it will change or reset the entire geopolitical situation for India, right? Moving on, let's talk about the background of it. Why we are discussing the background? Because Jerusalem is at the core of the background right now. So Jerusalem is a city that is straddled between the volatile regions of Palestine and Israel. And Jerusalem has its own significance because it is a place of worship. It has its religional significance for the Jews, the Christians and Muslims. So how to split this city into three parts, that is the major bone of contention. We will talk about specifically with respect to the US policy. The US policy had always chided Israel for unilateral annexation of Jerusalem, and recent policy has changed after the Trump administration came into power. In the year 2017, the Trump administration has said that Israel is actually the capital of Jerusalem, beg your pardon, is the capital of Israel. So what did it do? It shifted its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. After that, it was followed by Guatemala. And now many other countries are thinking to reset the relationship. Although the US unilaterally just flouting the resolution of the United Nations, it actually attracted condemnation as from even its staunchest supporters. And India also actually voted against the US when it unilaterally tried to intervene between Palestine and Israel when it comes to changing the status quo. So we will discuss that. So Jerusalem has this issue. Before that, let's talk about Jerusalem, right? So as you can see this particular map, Jerusalem had its status as an international area of special significance by the United Nations, and it was handed over to the UK in 1922. After that, when Israel became independent, this particular region was very contested between the Arabs and Israel. After that, what happened? The war came into place in the year 1948, and after that, more wars followed. And that particular war, if we talk about the year 1948, what did Israel do? It annexed certain parts here till here, right? And the rest of the area was occupied by Jordan. So if we talk about the wall, this is the wall, and it was actually into Jordan's occupation. And it actually talks about it. This area is very significant for Jews as well as Muslims because it shares the wall with Al-Aqsa Mosque and also the Rock Dome. So that's the entire issue. And this hill, which is in brown, dark brown, this was the main contested region. After 1967, after the Six-Day War, what happened? Jerusalem was annexed by Israel, and that was chided by the US. The US did not agree to the annexation. And also, if we talk about two other countries which were very infuriated, you have to name them in the comment segment, right? Along with the US. So after that, what happened? Israel actually took into account the entire region, and this blue line that you are seeing, that dark blue line, this is the city limits after Israeli annexation. So that is that. The entire area is contested on religion basis, on the basis of religion, and also regional basis. So it's both regional and religional. So if we talk about the background, United States chided, but after that its policy changed. And now as we can see, now this area, Israel, Jerusalem, and also the Arab nations after the Abraham Accords, this particular region is very important for the United States to show its hegemony and as a leader in the entire world. So that is what is happening right now. If we talk about the plan, which was actually shown in the year 2020, a year back actually, this map was released by the US, and this map was released in the sense in order to make a proper validation of its own plan. But it was actually this map that you are seeing on board right now. This was the plan, and it was done away by the Palestinians because they think this is much more for the interest of the US ally Israel and not for the Palestinians. So as you can see, here it's written, all Muslims who come in peace will be welcome to visit and pray at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Al-Aqsa Mosque is the third most revered place for Muslims. First one being Kaaba in Mecca, then Prophet's Mosque in Medina, and then comes Al-Aqsa. So if we talk about Al-Aqsa Mosque, beg your pardon, Al-Aqsa Mosque, 2 weeks back, there was a news that came into being that this region was obstructed because under the pretext of the COVID-19 pandemic, and right now the Muslims cannot go and pray there. So that was the news for it. So as you can see, US tried to establish its hegemony and leadership role, but the Palestinians did not agree to it first because the US actually unilaterally shifted its own embassy to Jerusalem. showing this is a sort of display that yes, we have agreed that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. And what happened after that? Turkey retaliated, saying that the East Jerusalem is actually the capital city of Palestine. So that is the entire issue, the background. Let's talk about the Abraham Accords. So Abraham Accords exist between Israel, UAE and Bahrain. It was mediated by the US and it is the first Arab-Israeli peace deal in 26 years. So if we talk about a peace deal before that, Egypt signed it for the first time ever in 1979, and after that in 1994, Jordan signed a peace deal, right? And this is another peace deal. And also, if we talk about the agreement, as per the agreement, the UAE and Bahrain will establish embassies and also exchange ambassadors. So if we see here, this particular map will show you that's Bahrain and that's UAE. So these countries have come under the Abraham Accords with the Israel. So if we talk about what are they going to do under the agreement, they will work together with Israel across a range of sectors including tourism, trade, healthcare and security. And the Abraham Accords will also has also opened door for Muslims around the world to visit the historic sites in Israel and to peacefully pray at the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, the third holiest site in Israel. If we talk about the reasons for it, the reason is bringing Israel, the UAE and Bahrain together. It reflects their shared concern about Iran's rising influence in the region and development of ballistic missiles. Iran has been critical of both deals. If we talk about the significance, now Arab nations, they are trying to decouple themselves or dehyphenate their actual equation with respect to Palestine. So first is that full diplomatic ties which has taken place will help in actually stabilizing the region, the volatile region. And also the deal will buy UAE, United Arab Emirates, a very, very strong goodwill in the United States because of UAE's actual participation in the Yemen wars. What happened? Its image was deteriorated in the US. So that is what will be taken into account. Now in South Asia, it has actually put Pakistan into bind. So if it follows the footsteps of UAE and recognizes Israel, now it will have to give up the cause of Muslims in Palestine. And if it doesn't follow the suit of the Arab nations, it has already been into a feud with the Saudis recently. So that is also a problem with respect to Abraham Accords, right? And then if we talk about the significance of India, it has a lot of significance. If we talk about from the geopolitical background, because South Asia, China, Central Asia, Europe and also Africa, they share their borders with this region. So India does need a stable region because India has interest, especially with respect to energy. 34% of the production of energy which is needed for economic stimulation comes from this region. And also diaspora cannot be ignored because major chunk of foreign remittance comes from this region. Most of the unskilled workers work in the construction sites, construction companies in these countries because of infrastructural boom. So that is why it is very important. This region in itself is very important for India. If we talk about the impacts on the geopolitical region. Now, according to Abraham Accords, 86% of the Palestinians also already think that this accord is not in the interest of Palestine, but in the interest of Israel. And further establishment, recognition, validation of this region, Jerusalem being the capital of Israel, with respect to establishment of embassies, will further just ignore the cause of Palestinians. That is the first impact. Shia-Sunni rift. Of course, the country of Saudi Arabia is a Sunni majority country and Iran is a Shiite country. So the schism between the sects of Muslim in itself could destabilize the region. Also, the embassies which have been formed of different countries around the globe will also get affected if attacks on their embassies occur because of militant groups of Palestine or even other groups, if not of Palestine. Moving on, let's talk about when in 2017, the US actually moved its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and after that Guatemala followed, and after that many other countries were thinking about resetting their ties with Israel with respect to Jerusalem. So India, it voted against the US. It actually showed that the policy of India is independent and without any external affairs. Even after it was said by the US representative that Donald Trump, the president of US back then, would take it very personally if any country did not followed US's suit. So that is the thing that shows about India, that India is following a rules-based order when it comes to not changing the entire status quo unilaterally, because India itself is engaged into a regional deadlock with respect to Jammu and Kashmir. So India, of course, will have to respect, and India should respect such moves. Now, if we talk about India and Israel relations, formal diplomatic relationship was established in 1992. If we talk about the establishment of Israel as a country in the year 1948, India was very reluctant to the fact of acknowledging its existence because it did not want to upset its relationship with the Arab nations. After that, when everything was settled a bit, India acknowledged the diplomatic relation in 1992, and because of its proximity, the US's proximity with India and US's proximity with Israel, it is causing India to come more and more into the arms of Israel. Though India will obviously, for the time being and for many days to come, it will follow a rules-based order, right? So if we talk about the formal acknowledgement of the relationship at the highest level, leaving behind hesitations of history and India's dehyphenation of Israel and Palestine policies was the first time in 2017. If we talk about economic engagement, India is engaged with Israel in sectors like technology, research and development, innovation and whatnot. Israel is also investing in India a lot, especially when it comes to renewable energy. Secondly, how can we forget about defense collaboration? Now, if we talk about defense collaboration in the comment segment, tell me some of the missiles that India has bought from the country Israel. All right. And if we talk about defense, the collaboration is such that it is in defense trade. When it comes to defense trade, it is India's second largest defense trading partner. All right. After Russia. Innovation and entrepreneurship culture, especially when it comes to Israel, the Jewish community is actually entrepreneur-based community. So if we talk about that, India and Israel are a big hub for startups and innovation, and these two countries have a lot of scope for actually expanding the scope. Moving on, if we talk about agricultural partnership and water conservation, it would just be a big deal to know that 95% of water in Israel is actually recycled, and India will become a water scarce country soon in the future. So India and Israel also have a lot of scope for that. And medical and pharma sector cooperation is also there. Diaspora potential is there. Now 80,000 Jewish Indians actually live in Israel approximately. So that is another area, that is another place where India can display its soft power. Also, academia, industry, government connect is also there. Counter-terrorism and intelligence sharing is there. Lot of intelligence, real-time intelligence is being shared between Israel and India since a very long time. Military and strategic ties and space collaboration in the year 2002. an agreement was signed between India and Israel to collaborate in the arena of space. And there are two very important satellites that have been launched. You have to tell the name in the comment box with respect to Israel and, of course, India. So now let's talk about our means-based question here, right? Discuss USA's West Asia Peace Plan. So you have to write it in 250 words. Alright? That's it for today. Tomorrow we shall meet again with another segment. Until then, stay updated and thank you so much for watching.